right. Welcome to the Details Podcast. You say a while, but like we've done worse than 3 weeks. So, I mean, this is not bad.
We've done a couple months, I believe, or so.
Yeah. Oh, a couple months?
Couple months.
Oh, the damn near year. Welcome to the podcast, folks. Episode 83. And I think we would not be doing justice if we didn't wish all the fathers out there a happy Father's Day. Did you spend time with Dale? I imagine you went to the links.
Oh man, you're brutal. You're brutal. You're brutal. You're brutal.
No,
brutal. Nope, you've already made the mistake, and it's done.
Oh my God,
it's done.
I swear that's the third time I've done this on this podcast.
Do you know? I've had to live on this earth for 25 years, and I've had to see people like you come in my life and act like you know me. And mispronounce my own parents' names. I don't know, D. I don't know.
Oh my God, I feel terrible now. The worst part is I know that they listen to this podcast.
I know, and I know that you're doing that to be specifically nice for that case, which I appreciate, but that backfired drastically.
Oh my goodness. Anyways, did you celebrate Father's Day?
So I shot him the old message like he always does. My old man is super like. The guy doesn't want anything, never has, doesn't care, kind of just hanging out. And, you know, my parents are a little older. So with this COVID thing, I've been pretty specific to stay away from that for my own conscience, really just for my own mental health on that one, to be honest. How about yourself?
I think I've said this like a million times on this podcast, whether it's Mother's Day, whether it's birthdays, Father's Day. My parents hate, like, I've given up on giving them gifts because it's just like, A, they don't use it, and B, it's like, why did you waste money? It's like such a colored mentality, right? So I didn't give them anything. And I'm sure our listeners are curious if I have AC in this house yet. I still do not have AC in this house. So I like to think that's my gift. I'm sacrificing, me being comfortable in this house. But I made an investment into a Honeywell a fan, which is right next to me, and it's beautiful. It's breathing great air on me. But
honestly, you didn't sound selfish at all in the past 30 seconds. You didn't. I promise. You're good.
I sacrificed, my livelihood here at home, but no, it's funny because I think I'm being sort of not ironic. What's the word? I'm not a hypocrite, but I don't wish my parents, a happy Father's Day, Mother's Day on social media because I'm like, they're never going to see it, right? Especially my parents of all parents. Oh my God. So I know they're never going to listen to this podcast, but maybe there's a couple of fathers that listen to our podcast. So I definitely did want to say happy Father's Day. It's weird, the 3 weeks that we kind of been away, a lot of people reached out to me that I never imagined would have listened to a podcast. So I just want to take like a couple seconds to say, thank you. For the people that said they missed, you and I being on here.
Oh man, that means probably more to us than they probably even know. That's right. Pretty cool.
All 20 of you. It doesn't matter what the number is.
It.
It's still sweet.
Whatever.
But Dave was on here, and I don't want to take any credit from Dave. Dave was on here last week, but a couple of people missed our banter over the last couple of weeks. So I'm glad that we were back.
I listened last week. That was a good pod.
Yeah. It kind of makes you wish that you were around for it, eh?
Man, I'm telling you, I know, but see, I think I'm going to go the opposite way. I had the best experience. I didn't even know they were in the finals.
Yeah. I'll never forget. Like I think I have the text screenshot. You're like, dude, what the hell happened? The Raptors are champions? Are you serious?
Right. Like my memory of it is that much weirder because I didn't even know they were eligible to be a champion yet. Like I hadn't even known that step when I was gone. So you know what? We should start this podcast because let's continue kind of off that podcast. Do you remember, I don't know if you rolled over in your bed or it was like mid-afternoon. Like when you read that text message, what was the thing that went through your head? It took 5 minutes to really just kind of make sure I was reading the right sentence, make sure that there was some proof for some articles, and then there was like a photo or two,
to make sure that you were to make sure that you were on an onion or anything like that, right?
Just so confused. Right. But no, I remember just thinking one actually being more instantly, and this is bad, this is kind of our sports mind, but I was like, what happened to the Warriors then? Right away I went there because again, I didn't even know the final matchup yet.
Right.
I would have.
For all you knew, you thought Durant was in the finals, right?
Oh my! So it could have been Giannis, right? I mean, the Sixers. The Sixers was. I didn't see the game, or no? Was it? It was the Bucks after the Sixers, correct?
No, it was Sixers, Bucks, and then Warriors.
The final. So I didn't even see the back half. I didn't see 3 wins against the Bucks. So for me going into the
like, so you knew that they beat the Sixers though. So you knew that they were playing in the conference finals championship.
Right. So it was, 4 teams had a shot here. And then in my mind, I was like, oh, I think Giannis, this is probably a good matchup for him. Maybe he can take, you know what I mean? But dude, just like, what the fuck? Like where I needed so much explanation. Like there was,
right.
And you know me, like I'm with these people that are also firefighters that aren't that big of sports fans. So they're kind of like, hey, like this just happened. And I'm like, whoa, you can't just say one part. Like I need a paragraph and a deep discussion. I need to start seeing some film now. Like what is going on?
It's too bad you didn't have a podcast to talk about it on.
There was no service up there, brother. This would have been a tough one.
Yeah, we're struggling enough with the Zooms. Like I can't imagine what that would look like. Yeah, no, it was kind of cool to recall and revisit. And a part of my homework, I was revisiting the Kawhi trade and trying to go back to how I felt about it. And I listened to a couple of our podcasts, and I don't know if you remember, but you were adamant about how bad this trade was for the Raptors.
Dude, I wanted to start this off.
I want to keep my receipts,
Oh, 100%. Hold me accountable. I wanted to start this off saying, but like, because I was listening to that podcast, thinking back on that, and I thought about a podcast where I just was like, this is stupid. Like I just basically said it was stupid, and at the time I genuinely believed that. And then like I was thinking about that. I was thinking when I was listening to the podcast, I was just laughing. I was like, man, I thought that Kawhi trade was abysmal at one point, and that just came back to haunt me.
And not even just them winning the championship, but the fact that they've been able to recover and be one of the threats out east this year's playoffs, right?
So now in the light that I always take, I want to fight both sides. Okay, so now I'm gonna say that I was wrong. I was wrong because you got a championship, so I was wrong, and there's no debate after that. Okay, but for a fun discussion.
An alternate universe?
Just another observation. Maybe I'll flip your perspective a little bit. After this season now, seeing what the Raptors could do and produce without Kawhi and how they could fulfill those numbers, do we not want to give a little bit more credit to Nick Nurse and his role?
I think it's unanimous that he's going to win Coach of the Year this year, and I think for that exact reason, right? Like, there's no question about that. But do you think Pascal would have been on the trajectory he is now if he was the go-to guy last year?
Right. Now, that's an interesting question, too. But if Nick Nurse – so let's get crazy again. The Raps go to the finals with no Kawhi Leonard. And maybe they win.
Maybe they don't. DeRozan. Right?
Kawhi was amazing and the trade worked out. But I think the biggest gem that we all got here was Nick Nurse.
Of all this, I think it's an underrated factor in everything. Because even last year, him not winning Coach of the Year, you think like what he has to do, right? He's sitting Kawhi. They have a winning record without Kawhi. What he's able to do, it's definitely. I think it's something that's not talked about enough. Right. Because I think even on that podcast, like I said to Dave, I was just like, I had no idea who this guy was. Right. He was a complete nobody to me. And then he came in there and proved who he was.
JJ Redick hopped on Bill Simmons a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how much he loved the Raptors because of Nick Nurse. Yeah. And to me, that kind of speaks a bit more to his quality of coaching. When you have that veteran guy that's been on 100 teams, that knows 150 coaches, knows all the players in the league, and he wants to take the time out and say that this guy specifically is that exponentially better. I don't know. I just think,
and a guy that robbed him of Eastern Conference Finals, potential finals, right? Because I listened to that same podcast. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, it takes a lot. Like, you are super mature to be able to admit that, because you're not going to hear that from Ben Simmons. You're not going to hear that from Joel Embiid, right? So for him to say, like, it's incredible what Toronto's doing and what they've been able to do post Kawhi, definitely shows a lot, and a lot of respect from the rest of the league as well, right?
100%. And I'm just saying, if Nick Nurse wins again this year, then he's better than Kawhi. He's more important than Kawhi.
Hey, and another thing is he had to sit in that room and convince Kawhi that this is going to work out, right? And then you didn't watch the finals, but the whole conversation, I remember the media talking about the box and one, how big that box was. They called it the janky defense. And they said, why, all these teams have played the Warriors, but none of them really thought to do this. And it worked out for them because Van Fleet was able to step his game and cover Steph Curry one-on-one.
Yeah. And this guy, like, what he's done this year and why he's going to win the Coach of the Year has to make you believe as a Raptor fan, like, this isn't the only championship we got. Like, I think that mentality should start turning that way, you know? And I think it still doesn't really feel like the Raptors universe has that same, you know, everyone still seems kind of high on this win. But dude, like, you might have the best coach in the NBA.
Yeah.
And you got some great young players and he can make some stuff work. And now the biggest thing with bringing free agents to Toronto, we always talk about the market and losing those big market guys, but we've never had this kind of perennial coach that people genuinely want to play for.
And more importantly, something I think you're forgetting about, and I think a lot of people don't discuss enough, is Messiah, right? Like, everyone's going to want to play for Messiah. Like we didn't talk about enough on the podcast, but I just listened to Messiah on the Woj podcast, and you know, Messiah is kind of leading, you know, the social justice issues and talking about how we need to fix the world, and it needs to start with our owners. And it's crazy. He's the only black president of basketball in the NBA right now, right? Like, and that's like that shouldn't be a stat. That should.
Oh no,
it's got to be better than that. He's putting accountability on the owners to step up, and I think a lot of players will see that and be like, not only do I want to play for this coach, but I want to play for a leader like Messiah.
He's hands down the best president, I think. As far as like GM and office goes, Toronto's top tier, dude. Like, this, with that championship, with that kind of organization and that love that you kind of feel from other guys now. Because, man, 10 years ago when we were basketball fans, there was no JJ Redick talking about the Raptors being fun.
Yeah,
there was none of that shit. That was never going to happen.
Right.
So these steps, I think, like, you know, I'm always been a realist. I didn't think there was much of a chance, but this is the blueprint. This is the blueprint. The president, the head coach, the ring. Now people should start flowing in.
The culture is the most important thing, right?
It's arguably one of the best fan bases in basketball.
Yeah, no, because you know, I think that we were so worried about what life would be like post Kawhi, but I think now, given our structure, given our development system seems to be like bar none, right? With the growth of Van Fleet and growth of Pascal, you're seeing Norman. OG still hasn't come into his own, right? Like, that's another player that we're all just waiting for to break out of his shell. Like, it's definitely a promising time to be a Raptor, and it's definitely a lot to look forward to. And no, I'm excited for what's ahead.
Definitely.
But yeah, I guess that's our segue right now, because we do have foreseeable basketball in our future, it looks like. You know, the Toronto Raptors today were the first team to travel down to Florida. A select few players and staff are traveling to Fort Myers until they have the green light to enter the Disney bubble, as they're calling it. No group workouts will take place before the Raptors enter the campus. Access to the team hotel and voluntary individual workout facilities will be limited to essential team personnel. Promising news, given everything that has come up in the last couple of weeks, given, you know, Kyrie Irving and Avery Bradley voicing their stance on going down there, given all the Black Lives Matter issues that are happening right now. We have a lot to catch up in, like, the last 3 weeks, but what is your initial thoughts with the NBA proceeding? Because it looks like they're going to.
Yeah, it's sticky, man. It really is sticky. And I understand both points of views, you know, the Kyrie Irving side where you don't want to play and there's a bigger fight to be had right now. And I totally agree with it. I don't think that's, you know, he kind of got slandered by some guys, but I don't think that's an outrageous claim to make at all. I think that's extremely level-headed of him and actually mature. And I think that you can hopefully maybe get a bit of both, you know. I think I'd rather see them take the initiative and use this platform, because I think what they're not also realizing is that, like, that normalcy to the human population might be a lot more effective, like a very, very big positive effect just for mental health and socially, and people to talk about things and watch things, right? So there is a ton going on in this, right? There's so many aspects that you have to kind of cover. So I'm not going to fault any guy for not wanting to play or wanting to play or whatever the case may be. But it's definitely looking sticky, man. And I'm sure we'll talk about later with the NHL. You see these guys kind of still, some tests are popping off. Again, we don't know if these tests, you don't know how sick these guys are going to be. In my opinion, every NBA player will have no symptoms. Right. In my opinion, that's what's going to happen. But there's so many unknown variables here that it seems like with a pretty quick 1-2 punch, this thing could get shut down pretty quick.
Right. Like one of the big unknown variables is I think one of the biggest concerns for these players are the Disney staff.
Yeah.
You know, their rules are kind of different from the NBA players where they're going to have the ability to go home, right? Like their union, you know, it states that, you know, these because they're not getting any more in pay, right? They're not being incentivized more. They get to go home. And when they come back, they're not going to be tested every day. I think it's like every 2 days or something like that. And so these are guys that are going to have to not direct contact with the players, but they'll be in their vicinity, right? And so that's where some of these players get concerned. And then you not to mention when these players, if they get into the playoffs and they get past the first round, their families start to join them, right? And then, so there's quarantine that has to happen with them. And there has to be, you know, these guys get to go golfing. These guys get to go to their lobbies and, you know, do extracurriculars. So the concern is definitely legit. There's no doubt about it. I mean, even Davis Bertans from the Washington Wizards today is the first player that came out and said that he won't be going. And, you know, he's playing for a contract. So he basically doesn't want to not only jeopardize his health, but it's not worth it to him. And, you know, there's 22 teams. Some of these teams that are kind of on the outside looking in, I may look at it and be like, it might not be worth it for him. Maybe there's not a chance for me to play extended, you know, games.
Especially if you're Washington.
Exactly.
I'd be like, whatever, dude. I don't care.
Without actually saying it, that's exactly what I meant.
That's fine. Yeah, like if you're a guy in the Pelicans that's saying it wasn't come, I'd kind of give you a weird look. But Washington players, yeah, I don't care. Whatever. Go. You guys are gonna win shit anyways. It don't matter.
And but even JJ Redick was saying on that podcast, you know, he's getting his temperature taken every day, and he's got to send it to the team. So you don't know what precautions every team is taking. Some might be taking it really seriously. Some might not be. Right. That's where it gets concerning. And not to mention, I mean, we haven't even addressed the elephant in the room. Florida is like one of the highest coronavirus states, or even cities in all the world. Like their numbers doubled on Friday and Saturday.
But okay, so this just means diagnose, correct?
Correct.
For my understanding of our position as North America collective group-ish area.
We should mention that James has a PhD, so yeah. Take that with a grain of salt.
Anyone that went to school with me would definitely be able to verify that. It feels like the deaths aren't going up though. Like the lethality of it doesn't seem like it's changed a ton. That's again, from what I understand, just the amount of numbers.
The positive tests are up, not the fact that people are dying from it.
So my issue with this is that, like I spoke to you about this previously. I have a very concerning feeling over the fact that this freedom and rules are able to be applied everywhere. And I believe that this would have a much better stance where if you let people decide, and this would allow these guys to speak out as well, and you let them just choose. You sign a waiver. Because I know it's like that seems kind of lackadaisical and you don't really think it's that serious. No. I do think it's that serious. But I think it's so serious in the sense that all these steps and all this money and all these things, you're just creating this complete massive configuration of structure of rules and stuff where in reality, there's going to be 10 guys that get it. Because we've been told since the start that there was always going to be a second wave and we were always going to get it again. So like, I don't understand everyone is so petrified and scared to have someone pop positive, but there should be more of a adjustment and plan for when that happens, because that's the issue that's going to come up.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's inevitable.
It's inevitable
that someone's going to get tested positive, right? Unfortunately, I think that if it's a bigger player name, then it's going to get blown out of proportion. And if it's a small player name, we might just like let it just go by. But I think you're correct in the sense that, you know, what are we doing to make sure that the rest of the players are not getting it? I'm sure that player will have to be quarantined. If they get quarantined and they're good to go, like, are players still going to feel safe being around that player, right? Like there's always that to think about.
Because you could flip it, right? You could totally flip the entire thing and say that this dome now is just, you guys just can't leave it, but we're not testing anybody. So if you get it, you get it. Sorry.
Right.
And I know, again, that sounds barbaric, but I don't believe that this disease to the 25-year-old guys that are in the best shape of their lives is lethal to them. I don't think it's going to happen. We've seen people that they can continue on. They don't even know they have it.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of players like Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, who are going to go to this bubble, and they've already had it once, right? And they were successfully able to overcome it. And the scary thing with especially Donovan Mitchell, like he said, he showed no symptoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're correct in the sense that, because I've been saying it to all the people that like I've been talking to, like it's gonna happen. We're gonna get a positive. I mean, we saw Austin Matthews is training, and he was hit with it, right? And I think it's interesting with Austin Matthews, and maybe I'm not reading into hockey news as much, so maybe it might be more out of blown up than I might see with my eyes on Twitter or whatever. But he caught it, and nobody's really talking about it now.
Well, this is speaking to more of a societal issue that I think over the past 3 weeks has just gotten more confusing, right? With all the protesting and all these riots and all these numbers are going up in cases and stuff. Again, then we talk about the deaths and all that. So there's just a ton of confusion, in my opinion. There's just so much confusion. And I just think that these guys should have the right to choose if they want to risk it.
Right. Absolutely.
And we should just,
because you said it, like there's what Kyrie said, what Avery Bradley said, what Dwight Howard even said. There was nothing wrong with what they said, right?
There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Freedom. What are we talking about? Do we have freedom or not? That's kind of my question at this point.
I mean, that's what we're fighting for right now, right?
Right. And we're fighting for it, but no one wants to acknowledge the fact that it got removed from us on a wink of it. Like people acknowledge it, but it's concerning. It's concerning. It's very concerning because if you're LeBron, like, man, you want to play, dude. If you get COVID, you want to have a COVID game. Like you want to add this to your Jordan. It doesn't matter to you. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't.
The flu game's now the new
game is now the COVID
game is the new flu game.
That's it.
I love that. We're gonna. You need to establish and trademark that because that's gonna be a thing. What I do think is interesting is the Players Coalition, they went on that Zoom chat and JJ Redick was on and he was talking about it. And Kyrie's the one that voiced out and came out and said all those things. What I do think is interesting is we haven't heard from Braun about everything after being so vocal. And, he initially put together that phone call with James Harden, Chris Paul, Carmelo. I think Carmelo, some of the bigger names, right? Who am I forgetting? Steph Curry. But we haven't heard from him since saying on his stance about, so if you don't know, and I'm sure you do know, Kyle Irving is really concerned about the fact that if they come back, all this attention and momentum that we've built, acknowledge Black Lives Matter and all the injustice that's happening and all the police brutality, it'll all be forgotten. Now, this is maybe a great question to you. Like, what do you think the players need to do to successfully come back and not forget everything that's been fought for?
Right, and that's kind of I hope Kyrie, if these guys do come back, they push to use that platform, right? And again, I don't know what it is. I hope everyone's wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. I hope that's always the case. Like that to me is the bare minimum.
Yeah, because I think it needs to be way more than just the t-shirts, right?
Oh my God, like that's the complete bare minimum is you should never take more than 2 steps without seeing the phrase Black Lives Matter in the arena. That's probably the bare minimum.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, of course.
ESPN did the ESPYs last night, and if you watch that, it was prominent. It was in your face, and for a team that got rid of Jameel Hill and what was her? Oh my God, sorry, my iTunes just started playing randomly right there. But Jameel Hill and her host, I want to say Michael Smith, but I know I'm butchering it. But they had their own show, right? And they've been very vocal on Black Lives Matters and police brutality, and unfortunately, they were let go. And ESPN really didn't get the brunt of it. Like they didn't get scolded for it. And even last night, Jameel Hill was like, "I've never seen this much, quote unquote, black content on ES before." And I think that is something that the NBA should take note and study and say, like, this is exactly what we need to do as well.
I know it's tough to do, but I would love to see them flip out all ad spaces for Black Lives Matter or ad spaces for something that, whether it's a donation to something, like provoking thought and discussion and pushing certain, Colin Kaepernick's donation place, all that stuff. Like I just only want to see that.
I totally agree with you.
I don't know if that sounds like too demanding or not, but I just think we've had so many reminders that our lives in this world is so much more vulnerable than we actually want to tend to believe, So just for 2 months, just stop about money.
Mm-hmm.
Just forget about it for a second.
And speaking of money, like this is where the owners have to step up as well,
Yes.
right? Like Mark Cuban and the Sacramento Kings owner kind of been the only two that have been vocal and on the forefront of all this. But some of these other owners really need to step up and support their players and make statements, donations, whatever they have to do to say we're all in on this, right? Because these players are going back to help these owners make money at the end of the day. That's what it is. That's what it's all about, right? So if they're going to do that for you, the least you could do is help and push the initiatives that are being put forth right now.
100%. And I don't know for anyone anyone that wants to go look up an owner's net worth, right? Like, hey, they got money. There's no.
It is pocket change for them to put money into it.
Dude, it's nothing. It's minuscule. It's an e-transfer. It's irrelevant, and it doesn't make sense that it's not even. It's not necessarily like assumed. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
So the couple of concerns that I have with what Kyrie said, I totally agree with what he said. But the thing that I've noticed, which is concerning to me, is when all the protests were going on, we saw guys going out there and protesting with them, right? We saw this Steven Jackson's an ex-player, but there was
Karl Anthony Towns was there.
Karl Anthony Towns. What was the
Steph
what was
Curry
the player?
Went out a bunch.
What was the one player that drove from drove 6 hours and it wasn't even in his city? I couldn't remember I want to say it was a Sixers player or something like that. Anyways, we saw these basketball players going out and supporting and getting out in their communities and being vocal. Trae Young being another perfect example of that, right? Now since then, I've really not seen a lot of players do anything. So I'm like, the great thing is like Kyrie doesn't want to go back and do things, but then why aren't they still doing things right now? And I don't know if I'm just oblivious to it or I'm just not seeing it as much. But I personally have not seen enough from the players if this is a path that they choose to take, right?
Right.
And then the other part of this conversation is, there is money to be made, when you go back to the bubble. And I don't know if it's the NBA allocating and saying, hey, do you want to give up a certain percentage, put these funds together and give it, that could be our part, is it a part of our TV deal that we're taking 5-10% and giving it away? Like, I think that's something, and maybe Kyrie needed to come forward for them to start thinking about this seriously too. Cause that's another part of the conversation as well. Right.
And I think that, people hit on Kyrie a lot and the flat earth comment and all that, but when he said the flat earth thing, he was trying to provoke the fact that people should have discussion and have a platform and have speaking and be able to say what they want to feel. So I don't know, man, you can hate on this guy, but I love him. He keeps coming back. He's true to himself, and over everybody else, he's been true to himself the whole time. He hasn't, and I don't think he's changed with that, and he's right. It's good. Someone's got to start saying it. Someone had to say that. Someone had to bring it up. It doesn't matter where it goes from there, but this is kind of what we're talking about. You want to spark the discussion. You want to be able to speak about things that are sometimes uncomfortable. Like that's exactly the kind of leader you need to have in that role. And he's been getting a lot of shit for it, but I think that people don't really catch the side and the perspective that he sees it from.
Right. Well, you know what? The NBA has been really forward thinking in what they do. They've always kind of been ahead of the other leagues. And so I'm fairly confident that, they will handle this situation right. And I feel like they will do Kyrie's feelings and thoughts and justice. But I personally think that it's such a big, like you think of how much or how many of us watched the match between Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Right. And, think about if we just had basketball right now, because we both know baseball's definitely not coming back, even though that there's like a small pocket of a window of optimism. And I think there was a missed opportunity for them, but that's a totally different conversation. But if all the attention is on the NBA, I feel like they're going to take advantage of that platform and use it the way that it should be.
100%. And I mean, I've been raving for this past however long with UFC. Like why in anyone's world you don't just completely put on this massive card right now, like Conor McGregor, John Jones, all of them,
right?
We don't have anything else to watch,
right?
Of course you're going to get the most buys, of course,
because I honestly haven't watched anything sport wise since that match, right?
Because what are you gonna do?
Right. Yeah, because you're not going to catch me watching Premier League or whatever the hell the soccer's called right now. See, I don't even know.
You're a hater. You know what? Watching some Premier League would do you some good. You got to respect the soccer.
I will not do it because I know I will start gambling right now, and I'm sober. I'm clean right now from it, so I'm just trying to keep away, right? So speaking of baseball, because I know you're a big baseball fan.
Yep.
Can you talk about, like, I got to imagine you're really, really disappointed in, and I mean, not even the players, but I think it's the owners that are just really, really greedy at this point, right?
Well, man, I'm still down in the dumps from the Astros, dude. I'm not going to forget about stuff. I'm not the kind of guy that just only remembers the most recent incident. And you know that about me. Like that thing hasn't sat right with me still. I don't like that there's this much cheating in baseball, and now the commissioner didn't even really care and didn't handle it right. Now he doesn't want to friggin' pay the guys. He's scared about legal action from players. Man, I think there is no easy answer to this. I'm dumbfounded that they're not already starting a progression to get in. Out of all the sports as well, baseball, I don't know if you guys are aware. I mean, batters wear gloves. They hit the ball with a bat. There's not really a whole ton of contact here. Like, it's just catcher and pitcher. Really, it's just
like, no pun intended, but this was a softball for them. Like, yes. It was given to them on a silver platter to start things up and have an advantage on all the other leagues. When
you look at a dugout, it's usually big enough that everyone's 6 feet apart anyways. Like, this blows my mind that they haven't done this. And then, because then you could try and someone be like, oh, there's no place to do it. Arizona, done. Like, there's thousands of places to do it. There's so many easy ways to do it. It's insane to me. And I think Manfred's got to go. I think you got to get a new commissioner. And I don't know, maybe the MLB PA is able to vote him out or whatever the case is, but he's completely holding baseball right now and ruining it. Honestly, I think ruining it and holding it back from a time where it needs to excel, where all of these other sports are taking such great growth over the past decade, and baseball just is not there with them.
Is it so bad that you dare to bring back Bud Selig?
No.
Okay, it's not that bad yet, eh?
I want like an innovative guy. I want an Adam Silver. I want someone liberal. I want someone discussive that talks things out, thinks it through. This Manfred guy sucks, man, and he's ruining the greatest, I think the best, genuine, most cultured, historied sport that there is.
I watched the Sosa McGuire documentary, the long shot of the long ball. I can't remember what it's called. And I was just thinking to myself how captivated and invested I was into baseball when I watched that time. And I was like, God damn, like, I missed that. And I thought to myself, if baseball was the only thing on right now, it would be a perfect opportunity to get me in. All these people that, have sworn off baseball, that watch baseball for 50, 60 years, that are old timers now because they hate what the game has become. Like, I think it would have been such a huge opportunity to bring us together collectively, for America's pastime. Like, it would have been the world's pastime, if they come back. And it's just really, 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 really sad that they just can't get their shit together. My other concerning thing too is, like, I don't think they're forward thinking like the NBA in the sense that, if they do figure out a deal and they come to a consensus, I don't think they'll have the protocol or any of the other things that you need to do in order to start the baseball season ready to go either. Like, I feel like it'd be like, oh, we got a deal. Okay, now we got to put the health and safety guidelines together, and that might take us another 2 to 3 weeks, right?
Baseball's problem is their greatest asset. And I just said it. It's the culture and the history. These are the dudes that wrote on the feather pen 150 years ago, and they believe it. They don't want to change it. They wrote that, and that's right. Don't fuck with our game. Don't change our game. It's just old school, man. It's old school. No sport is the same as it was.
Right. No, totally.
Baseball will be the closest thing that you can go back and compare throughout your whole history. But is that good?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
When has anything stagnant forever been good? That's not a recipe for success. That never has been. You need to have growth. You need to have change. Change is good.
Right. Yeah. Bring the steroids back, right?
Where are you on that after that documentary?
So I didn't know that Sosa was blackballed from the Cubs, and he still hasn't been invited back. So that was like my major takeaway. Like, I thought, like, this guy was MVP that year. I totally forgot that he won MVP that year. It took the Cubs to the playoffs, right? He was incredible. And the wild thing to me was he had a slow start, right? Because of the cold weather. Like it's crazy to think that he possibly could have had more home runs and just abolished that home run record.
But the home run part, of course, he had 148 RBIs that year. It was like something like, what?
Stupid. Yeah.
Like, huh? We scored 2 runs a game and you had 150 of them? Like, what the?
Yeah.
Like, just crazy numbers.
Right. So that was interesting to me. I know what you want. I know the answer that you like, the question that you are ultimately asking me here. The other thing that that was fascinating to me was the Ken Griffey stuff, because I got into baseball because of the kid. My first baseball jersey, baseball hat was a Seattle Mariners hat because I loved him so much. So I forgot how involved he was with that home run race, and it had started between McGuire and Griffey because they were the bigger names, right? So just came out of left field and surprised both of them. And then the last part, which I'm sure is what you want to know, I you know what? After watching it, very similar to the Lance Armstrong documentary, because I think there's definitely some parallels there. If everyone was doing it, then is there really an issue?
Yeah. It's tough, man. It's so tough. It's so tough. Because then you start generalizing like that, but you don't know. They say it like every arm we faced had roids on it. You don't know that.
Right.
You just don't know that.
And the other thing, I don't know. He could be putting a facade on. Mark McGuire seems like a pretty humble, pretty stand-up guy, right? And he was saying that, he took these meds because of the pain that he was having. He had some back pain. So when you're using this medicine, to take care and alleviate pain, is it really like you're just trying to get more dangerous?
No, come on. You should.
I'm playing devil's advocate here, right? Yeah.
The classic back pain testosterone fix is like the one that they've always used. All the roiders have always used that. Like that goes back in the day. Because they say, well, I hurt my back. Well, how'd you hurt your back? Oh, I deadlifted 800 pounds. Well, how'd you get to deadlift 800 pounds? Well, I took HGH for 20 years. Oh, okay. Then that's fucking steroids.
That'll do it. Right.
That's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, every time they go with the back pain thing, I'm like, I don't believe you.
Because then he also he said it from the get-go, I was put on this planet to hit home runs, right? And if that's your mindset and your mentality, you're going to do whatever it takes to hit home runs, right? So it's definitely really tough. I'm really curious if Sammy did it, right? After that documentary, I'm not certain, especially because no one's been able to prove it since. But yeah, it's tough because if everyone else is doing it, what are you doing? You just did it better than everybody else,
But so my thing with the Lance thing with that, right? He said everyone else is doing it. You're in a cycling meet. You probably know the guys. You know the training. Cycling's different, right? Everyone results in numbers. You get a distance and a time, and they're congruent. They're quantitative. You can measure them and compare them to everybody else. So you can kind of see, if one cyclist is 20 minutes behind, maybe that guy's not on steroids. So I understand them making those assumptions, but man, there's single A, double A, triple A, then the pros. Then you have 20 pitchers on each roster. Pitchers will hop down, up and down throughout week to week, team to team. How the fuck are you going to tell me everyone you faced was on steroids? You don't know. You don't even know half the people in the MLB. You don't even know 60% of the players in this league. And you're going to sit here and tell me on this that you shouldn't be shamed for doing roids because everyone was doing it. That is the most generic cop-out, in my opinion, of all time.
Right.
Proof is proof,
So do you think all their records are stained or they should have asterisks? How do you feel about it?
Records, I think if you played the game and you did the numbers, then they got to count. It happened. It's not like you can just dismiss a year of a guy's life. Listen, if he cheated and he didn't get caught for it, that's on fucking you, baseball, not on him.
It's basically what the Cubbies are doing to Sammy Sosa right now.
Right. And I don't think that's correct. And again, this is from this cultural, historic aspect. How dare you cheat on us? Fuck you. You're out. That's baseball. That's always been baseball. And again, it makes them so strong and so beautiful what they are because they're so historical. But it's just they won't adapt to a change. They won't we're not the same anymore. This isn't this society is completely different than it was at that point of time, and you have to adapt. You have to create change.
Of all the guys that have been caught for steroids, Like, who are some of the biggest pieces of shit to you?
Some of the biggest pieces of shit.
Like, who? Like, is there a certain player, whether it's A-Rod, Barry Bonds, like you just like you're not having it with them?
See, it's tough because
I ask you because you're a bigger baseball fan than I am.
Man, I love baseball. You played it growing up too, right? It's still, but probably my most favorite sport, closest to my heart. And like these steroid things, I flip flop on. I flip flop on because I've hit a baseball, and dude, it's you got
wow.
You gotta like you gotta. It's just not a simple concept. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just such a difficult skill where I understand if they got steroids, it'll go farther and all that. But so my argument and my stance that would back Mark McGwire on this, I guess we'll go against him, but it would be the pitchers, if they're doing steroids, right? And these steroids are creating the long ball, then why weren't these guys throwing 110?
That's what the doc was called, long ball. I'm an idiot. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. But so if I'm going to shame Mark McGwire, well, if he wasn't on steroids, he wouldn't hit the ball far enough. Okay. So if the pitcher's on steroids and he's only still throwing 96, which is like a league average, well, if batters are on roids, maybe they would hit the same too.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know the difference?
Right.
You would have to compare it, have it a completely like, in order for us to pull out these facts and actually look at these true numbers, it's kind of impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to put ownership on the MLB. If these guys came in and they knocked out home run records and you guys got tons of revenue from all these fan bases and jersey sales for these guys doing steroids and hitting home runs, that's on you for them doing steroids. Every league should have better testing. Listen,
and they did have testing back then.
Right. We could say this about everybody. I remember talking to a guy that I wouldn't name, and he was like, everyone in all the leagues take steroids, And it's like, this is just a stupid way to make yourself feel better for cheating.
Right.
If none of us ever cared about the comparison, you know what I mean? This is the same thing. Like, oh, if you jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? It's the same fucking question. Just because everyone's doing steroids, wouldn't that kind of, if you are actually like a morally strong person, to me, that would motivate me to try and fucking knock these guys out of the league in a real way.
So here's a question for you that I don't know. So when they were taking steroids back then, was it like, if you got it over the counter, was it banned? Like, could you like be prescribed for steroids?
For sure. Yes,
yes. Okay, so if that's the case and it wasn't a banned substance and people were just taking it,
prescribed and banned aren't the same thing. And the technology at that point, there would have been guys ahead of the curve that we would not know about still to this day that did steroids, because we didn't have that science, I don't think, to the nth degree that we do here with like USADA. I see it a lot in USADA and UFC with Jeff Nowitzki. He's like this. The testing is insane. Like John Jones. Remember John Jones got popped for 0.00000000001 of like some meta blocker that sometimes helps a steroid.
Wasn't it his fifth infraction too?
Something like that. But I think that for example, USADA caught John Jones for steroids when they found an estrogen blocker. The reason for taking the estrogen blocker is because when you increase your testosterone, your estrogen increases as well. So it would be obvious for them to catch you on steroids. So that's my point, where Mark McGwire could have had something along those lines where he was deviating to hide it, but they wouldn't have had that technology to say, oh, he's using an estrogen blocker. Or he's using
right.
Do you know what I mean? So some of those guys, I think, that we'll never know about were probably just ahead of the curve at the right times.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, this is why we're still arguing it to this day, right? No, like it comes up every so often on talk show radios, podcasts, whatever it may. It's like the forever debate of what's right and what's wrong. But
I hate the generic, like, everyone's on steroids, but you and I both know there's someone in the NFL on steroids that hasn't been caught.
Right, 100%.
There's probably 50 players in the NFL that hasn't been caught.
Right. His name's DJ Metcalf. No, I'm kidding.
This is the thing too that I want to be on Mark McGwire's side for. Man, you know how many people that take steroids have failed at their sport?
That's true, right?
like there's so many failures of steroids. It's not just an easy one thing.
If Lance Armstrong didn't dominate by cycling, it wouldn't have been as big of news as it was.
Never comes out.
Right. Yeah,
never comes out.
No, it's never talked about.
There's an NFL lineman that got popped for steroids as a linebacker that was shit, and he did steroids for 10 years and played for 8 years, and he was like kind of a floating guy. No one said a word.
Right.
But when they're someone good, their actual athletic ability, their actual skill of the game allows them to use that strength that they're, again, cheating with. Now we have to just hate on. I don't know. It's tough, man. It's so tough.
Well, it's kind of like Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is kind of a no-name under the radar for so long, and it wasn't until he started coming close to breaking that home run record that we started talking about him. And then once he did, and then we found out he was doing steroids, it was just like, let's burn him, right?
And he's the tough one, right? Because you see him in his early years. I don't know if you see Barry Bonds. Have you ever seen photos of him? But he's like,
yeah.
He's like 185 pounds, lean, mean machine, like fast, speedy guy, great baseball player. And then like, there's this like great point in his career where he's just like, oh, now I'm 230 and bang homers. It's like,
right.
I don't know what happened there, but okay.
Photoshop kicked in right there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's an interesting one. So I was asking you this because, you know, Barry Bonds is one of them. A-Rod's one of them. Jose Canseco's like one of the biggest ones, right? Because he's the one that like basically told on everybody.
Canseco's kind of shitty,
snitch,
yeah.
Right? He's a shitty human being. So that's why I brought that question. I really like how you avoided the answering that question. Good job by you.
It is. It's funny.
That's why we pay the big bucks on here.
Canseco was the first guy I was going to throw under the bus too, but I decided against it, so we're good.
Fair enough. No, but I'm glad we brought that up because of the last 5 Sundays of my life's been consumed by these docs, you know, Last Dance, Be Water, Long Gone Summer, that's what it was called. Then the Lance doc, and then it all ended for me last night. I was like, I have nothing to look forward to.
I have to say too, we should appreciate Ken Griffey Jr. for being potentially, this is like a weird categorization. Played on the Mariners forever, right? And he just so committed to the game of baseball. There was no Yankee jump. There was none of that. There was no complaining or bitching and moaning. That guy, I haven't heard a thing from him outside of baseball. Like that was a dude that like, when you watched him play and you heard him talk in those interviews and stuff, you're like, no, that guy just genuinely loves baseball more than anybody else here. Like that's really what this is about.
There's a great clip on the MLB network that was being tossed around this weekend, and it was Griffey talking about his swing. And, you know, I played baseball, and I had no mechanics in my swing, right? It was always just swing as hard as you could, place it wherever you wanted. But, like, just for him to say that, you know, you're trying to hit this part of the bat and you're trying to get it, you know, when you tap, like, he always tapped the outside of the base, right? Because that was his reach. It's just like, you were talking about this earlier, right? It's the science and the intricacy in baseball. You don't realize how much of a difference a second can make in your swing or where you hit the ball on your bat. And it's just like he had perfected that, and there's a reason everyone says that he has the perfect swing.
And dude, like the swing mechanics itself, I would say took me at least 4 years to actually obtain a similar swing like consistently, which is like it's a crazy thing to do that. And then you have to go on the fact that like this is part that again the average fan doesn't even understand. You have to read pitches, man. At a 90-mile-per-hour level where there's
wild
breaking balls, there's cutters, there's sliders. They have certain tendencies. There's 25 guys on each team. You got to know all their pitches. Again, like I talked about, you guys get call-ups and called down. Man, Ken Griffey to me, I thought was, again, one of those guys where I think you plug and play him. You know, like you just tell him, what do you want to do? Okay, go do it. He'll do it. Like basketball, football, whatever the sport was. But I always appreciate when you see the genuine love for the game in these athletes. And you know, the Last Dance showed us it. And I think Ken Griffey too. That was
another perfect example was, I saw the Roy Halladay doc, and you know, as riveting as that was in terms of, you know, him wanting to be perfect and to what extent and what level and how personal he took everything. It was also obviously really sad because it led to the detriment and the death of what he ended up facing. Right. But that's someone who, you know, he studied everything, right? Whether it was batters, you know, how he approached the game, the mentality, all that sort of stuff. It's just like, it's crazy to think, you know, some of these greats like Kobe, Roy Halladay, right? Like there's a sickness and there's a madness to it in order to perfect it. And it's all in the little details that you were just alluding to.
Yeah, no, I watched the doc for years to pitch for the Jays. I don't think I saw him smile once. I think that probably would be the guy I've seen the most starts in person. I've seen the doc pitch probably like 10 times or so now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw him for Philadelphia one time when he came back as well. But dude, that guy didn't smile once. Like locked in, dude. Like he's here for the game.
Right. Like and that's not his personality, right? He was a happy, fun-loving guy, exactly. Right? Like it's just like when it came to the sport, he only had one knob, right? And he just turned it on, and then he would turn it off once the game was over.
It's impressive, man. Crazy.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So I really had no agenda for this podcast, so we're kind of getting near the end. But because it's been 3 weeks, is there something that we haven't talked about that you kind of wanted to bring up? I always bring up the subjects. I thought I'd flip it on you for a change. I mean, there doesn't have to be anything. We had a great conversation.
Yeah, no, this was good, man. I'm excited. Like this is, I miss talking to you about some stuff, man. I miss having the sports to ramble about too, to be honest. I'm excited to hopefully get some things back here to start having more drastic opinions like my Celtics and all that. But I haven't been up to a whole lot, dude.
Yeah, it's the beginning of the week, so I'm sure that stuff will trickle down throughout this the course of the week. I mean, Dak's going to sign his franchise tag, and so that'll be another conversation for the next couple of weeks. But you know what? We should do a football catch up next week and see what's going on in the league and see you know. Because the whole Dak thing is interesting because I mean I don't want to get into it, but the Dak thing is interesting because there's a lot of other things that I was thinking about. You know, the CBA is coming out, like the new CBA will be coming out next year, and like you know the cap situation will be not CBA. Sorry, the cap will be adjusted next year, but a lot of that will affect on you know how much money they make this year, which won't be a lot. So you know Dak could end up screwing himself over, right? So that's a whole different web and conversation we get into. But no, this was a good start coming back. So I appreciate you coming back and we catching up like this.
Glad to be back, man. Good to see you.
Awesome. So to wrap on the podcast, as always, you can catch us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, all that good jazz. I do want to bring up again, I did it at the beginning of last podcast. I posted everywhere I could Gabe's link to his article that he wrote.
Yeah, that was amazing.
In the Toronto Star. So Gabe, again, we're super proud of you, and I'm going to continue to push that out. And I've been told through multiple sources, not even Gabe directly, that there's possible more articles. So James and I have our fingers crossed, and we hope that that you'll be writing more because if you follow him on Twitter, man's got opinions.
He does. No, that was a tremendous read, and that brought a real big smile to my face when I saw that he got that post, and that's amazing recognition. That's completely well deserved.
Yeah, for sure. So Gabe, great job. I'm sure you'll be back in the future. And in the meantime, folks, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully it doesn't rain too much for the remainder of the week because it's looking that way. But thanks for joining us, and James, thanks for being here.
Thank you, man.